the other part of our news is that the easing of restrictions has been happening across the country. Saskatchewan and Alberta getting rid of vaccine passports, getting rid of masks, social distancing stuff. And it's coming out here in Nova Scotia. And we've been more conservative when it comes to COVID restrictions, whatever you want to call them. And the funny thing is to see people being like, yeah, that's right. Finally. And they're so happy. And this is what I don't understand. Obviously, were some bad press around the convoy.
Yeah.
But what they wanted were less mandates, less restrictions, less challenges going across borders.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks later, and everyone's like, how dare you? And a lot of people were very strongly in opposition to them.
Yeah.
And then they all the provinces roll out something similar to what they would have been asking for.
Yeah.
And everyone is happy about it. So I'm not saying I agree with the convoy or the people there. I agree with their right to protest, and I agree with their right to speak their mind, and I sympathize with how they feel. But we all do want the same thing, which is no masks, no mandates, freedom to go across the country. They just wanted it apparently 2.5 weeks earlier than the rest of us.
Well, I think it's funny that they're doing all this, and at the same time, every province that does it's like, we're not doing this in response to the convoy.
Well, Saskatchewan and Alberta are definitely doing it in response to the convoy to some degree.
They still preface it with that.
Yeah, of course they do.
And every province now is setting out a rollout on what they need to do. I feel, I don't want to say it, but I feel like the convoy definitely plays into it 100%.
Well, sadly, the convoy plays into it because if you're in a conservative-leaning province, you see the support there, right? So it's not surprising that Saskatchewan and Alberta were the first to be like, oh, you really feel that strongly, eh? And they look around, and the trend of the sentiment is towards that.
Shaking heads.
So boom, it's gone. Interestingly, people inside the Liberal Party recently came out, like a backbencher came out and tore a shred out of Trudeau for politicizing this from the jump, which is very, very interesting. And obviously the fringe stuff associated with that convoy was not good, but the larger message has been better received than maybe people expected and seems to be a bit more in line maybe than people would be willing to admit. A lot of people are over this, for lack of a better term, and are looking to move on safely. And it's coincidental timing for sure that now the provinces are looking at doing that. So, but it's always going to be political, man.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out what the background play is. I'm on it. The big money's in it. It was weird how they were able to fundraise so much capital so quickly. Some of the donations were insanely large.
Oh, 100%.
What's the play? What's going on here?
Well,
It'll never come out, but
yeah, like it further divides the country, and then you have to think of like, all right, well, who benefits from the country being further divided? And you know, when things like the convoys going over here, or Joe Rogan and Neil Young are beefing over here, you stop paying attention to stuff that maybe actually matters, right? Like that distracting element, maybe keeps people away from things like, well, how come our medical system was never built to handle a pandemic? Isn't that the sort of thing that you should build a healthcare system around? Is like being prepared for this? How come we never really questioned the fact that we weren't safely taking care of elderly people? All of these questions that you should be asking your government right now, but instead everyone's just yelling about truckers and Neil Young and Joe Rogan, right? And whether that sounds like a conspiracy theory, I'm not saying it to that extent, but there is something to be said for how we get distracted by stuff and how that expands inequality. Like the income inequality that has happened during this during this pandemic, it's been huge. And you don't hear that really talked about that much relative to some very stupid things. Like think about how messed up the Neil Young
of wealth.
Think about how messed up the Neil Young Joe Rogan thing is, where Neil Young thinks Joe Rogan is bad, but Amazon is good. I think we talked about this before. Like how messed up is that? Because he went immediately to start peddling Amazon music.
I just want our podcast to be big enough that a musician takes his music off of Spotify.
Oh yeah. I pull my own music from our opening credits.
Chandler gets so mad that he pulls his music off. We did touch on that. I want to stay focused on this.
Yes. Okay.
So let's keep it moving here. But It is an interesting one, and we're gonna have to start like maybe do some episodes separately on this. If people are interested, if someone's interested in hearing some more about it, I think you should message us, and then we could maybe do a couple episodes and let Chandler give it to you. Thanks for watching that clip from the Master Keys podcast. Check out that full episode here. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share our podcast.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.